Bill Belichick has won 6 Super Bowl rings as head coach, 2 more as an assistant. He's also had 333 wins, second only to Don Shula in NFL history. And he's been awarded 3-time Coach of the Year. And on January 27, 2026, 50 people anonymously voted and decided Bill Belichick wasn't good enough. Not good enough for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not on the first ballot, anyway. Their votes remain secret, as well as the reasoning behind it and the final count. Kansas City Chiefs superstar Patrick Mahomes called it insane. J.J. Watt said it can't be the actual Hall of Fame. LeBron James, who doesn't even play football, said it was egregious and disrespectful. Many are asking, who voted him out? But here's what nobody's asking. How is it even possible that the most accomplished coach of his generation gets rejected by a process no one can see? And if merit wasn't the problem, what was?
That's the great question.
The backlash was instant and universal. Current players, Hall of Famers, even Jimmy Johnson, himself a Hall of Famer, said, "This is just wrong." Lot of small, jealous voters. Former Patriots were even more blunt. James White simply said, "Outrageous." Devin McCourty, "Dumbest shit we will see all 2026." ESPN commentator Stephen Smith also voiced his criticisms against the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Check it out.
We should boycott that bad boy. Nobody should show up. Nobody should want to go into that Hall of Fame if Bill Belichick ain't in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. 6 championships as a head coach, 8 overall, 2 as a defensive coordinator, universally recognized as arguably the greatest coach in the history of football. And if you don't definitively feel that way, it clearly is a discussion. There is no reason on earth that Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I know T.O. got robbed as a wide receiver. That shouldn't have happened, by the way, okay? What are you going to do next? If it's going to be because of Spygate, if it's going to be because of Deflategate, are you going to use that excuse to keep Tom Brady out as a first ballot Hall of Famer next? I'm telling you right now, there are certain things that are so egregious, it stinks to the high heavens.
The reaction was unanimous among pros, pundits, and fans, who flooded social media with comments. Even some of the 50 actual voters rushed to say they weren't the ones who voted against him. One of them told ESPN that Spygate was the reason several selectors could not bring themselves to vote for Belichick. Spygate, a videotaping violation from 2007, 19 years ago, that cost Belichick a $500,000 fine. It is striking that this was considered sufficient grounds when evaluating the most successful coach in modern football. Sources close to Belichick told ESPN he believes politics kept him out. He wondered aloud whether 8 Super Bowl rings weren't enough. So, what actually happened? To understand that, you need to understand something most fans never see: how the Hall of Fame actually works, and why that process itself might be the problem. Here's how 50 people decide who belongs in football history. The Pro Football Hall of Fame uses what they call a rigorous selection process. In practice, it's one of the most opaque systems in American sports. 50 selectors, mostly veteran sports writers, plus a few Hall of Famers like Bill Polian and Tony Dungy, meet before the Super Bowl. Then, they cast anonymous ballots. For someone to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, they need 40 votes out of 50. That's 80%. The ballots are counted by the auditing and consulting firm Ernst & Young, which oversees the secrecy of the voting process. The stated purpose of this confidentiality is to prevent voters from being singled out for unpopular decisions, and to keep the process strictly technical. However, the vote totals are never released, and individual ballots remain fully anonymous. Secrecy is meant to protect voters from pressure and keep the process from becoming a popularity contest. But it also means no one can see what factors shape each decision. The system depends on the idea that whatever those factors may be, they cancel each other out in the end. One voter told The Athletic this creates room for what he called piety and score settling. When your vote is secret, you can claim the moral high ground while acting on grudges. Former Colts general manager Bill Polian, a voter who had bitter playoff battles with Belichick, was accused of lobbying others to make him wait a year as punishment for Spygate. Polian denied it, saying he was 95% sure he voted for Belichick and was shocked by the result. If these allegations are true, they may break the system and turn the Hall of Fame into something even worse than a popularity contest, a machine of personal and political influence. And here's the thing. No one can either confirm or debunk this statement. With no transparency, speculation filled the void, and three main theories emerged. This is what some voters admitted to on the record. Spygate in 2007, Deflategate in 2015. One anonymous voter told ESPN the only explanation was the cheating stuff. It really bothered some of the guys. This theory has holes, however. The Hall has inducted players and coaches with violations seen by many as far worse, such as Paul Hornung or Alex Karras. If this is true, there appears to be a double standard, one that applies to some people and lets others off the hook. Jimmy Johnson's comment about small, jealous voters points here. Johnson refers to possible former rivals that have become voters of the Hall of Fame committee. In following posts, he doubled down, calling them cowards for not coming out and taking responsibility for their votes. This is where it gets interesting for anyone watching institutions in 2026. Belichick supported Donald Trump publicly. He read a letter at a 2016 rally.
Coach Belichick, congratulations on a tremendous campaign. You have dealt with an unbelievable slanted and negative media and have come out beautifully. You've proved to be the ultimate competitor and fighter. Your leadership is amazing. I have always had tremendous respect for you, but the toughness and perseverance you have displayed over the past year is remarkable. Hopefully tomorrow's election results will give the opportunity to make America great again. Best wishes for great results tomorrow, Bill Belichick.
After the news broke, Trump himself called the snub ridiculous. Still, there's no direct evidence political bias influenced the votes. The Hall says it's about football, but when the process is secret, you can't verify that claim. You just have to trust them. And in 2026 America, trust in institutions isn't exactly abundant. If you want to understand how arbitrary this process can be, look at who's already in and who's still waiting. Joe Namath is in the Hall of Fame. He's a legend because he guaranteed a Super Bowl win and delivered. Great story. But his actual stats? According to StatMuse, Namath has more interceptions than touchdowns, below a 50% completion rate. Lynn Swann got in largely because of spectacular Super Bowl catches. His career total? 336 receptions. There are receivers not in the Hall with 3 times that production. Meanwhile, Ken Anderson, 1981 MVP, 4-time passing leader, is still waiting. L.C. Greenwood anchored the Steel Curtain with 6 Pro Bowls and 4 Super Bowls. Still waiting. Roger Craig was the first running back to rush and receive for 1,000 yards in the same season. Won 3 Super Bowls. Still waiting. Despite not having a pattern here, it seems the Hall might prioritize stardom, personality, showmanship, criteria that might differ from stats when it wants to. The consistency here is the inconsistency. Which brings us back to Belichick. If the system worked on numbers and facts, he'd be first ballot, unanimous. If character is part of the evaluation, the criteria would need to be defined and applied consistently to maintain long-term trust in the process. A simpler explanation may be that the outcome depends on how 50 anonymous voters interpret the criteria in any given year. Here's why this matters beyond football. We're living in an era in which Americans are scrutinizing institution after institution more closely than at any other time in our history. There is little tolerance for opaque decision-making processes that are disconnected from what people perceive as fair and just. From institutions like the United Nations, the European Union, and the World Health Organization to, yes, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The Bill Belichick snub is a football story, but it also shows what happens when institutions make decisions without transparency and without producing outcomes people can understand. Bill Belichick will almost certainly get into the Hall of Fame eventually. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. But this isn't really about Belichick anymore. It's about what happens when decisions involving things people care about are made out of public view, and when those decisions can't be clearly explained. The 50 voters who decide football immortality are chosen by other insiders, using criteria that remain largely internal. Their votes are anonymous. Their reasoning is never made public, which leads to the larger question. If merit and transparency are this hard to verify in the Football Hall of Fame, what actually determines the outcome? Before you go, let's establish some language. When institutions defend secrecy by claiming it protects integrity, ask what they're protecting it from. Usually, it's accountability. And when 50 people make a decision that contradicts what everyone can see with their own eyes, then hide behind anonymity to defend it, that's how oligarchy works. Now, what do you think happened here? Drop your theory below. But more importantly, tell us where else you see this pattern. What other institutions are demanding trust while refusing transparency? Because Belichick is just football, but this pattern, this is everywhere. If you want more investigations that ask the questions institutions would rather avoid, subscribe to Big Picture Originals and support our work. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and unlock our best investigations, films, series, and documentaries.